Greetings everybody, it's Edmon here, and this is my guide to heat management. So, what we have in front of us here is an Omni-Mech from BattleTech, but all the lessons are going to also apply to vanilla. Now, there are a lot of builds out there for getting the optimal heat management out of X, Y, and Z mech. This guide really isn't that. This guide is about giving you the tools that you need to actually make good heat decisions. And I'm going to explain some of the strategies out there that are very, very typically used, including the Sleepy Awesome strategy, which is the min-maxer's version of heat management. So, just to get started, in this exercise, I am basically going to say that we are limited to 12 tons. And we're going to do an exercise with medium lasers just to explore the concepts of heat management, make it as simple and as easy and as step by step as possible. So, if I said to you that you had 12 tons to play with and you could only use medium lasers and you had an Omni-Mech, so hard points weren't an issue, and you happen to be French. Is he French? I don't know. But if you happen to be the beef, then you would be like, 12 tons and medium lasers. I will have 12 medium lasers. Yes, you put 12 medium lasers on this beast for 300 points of pure damage. Heat sinks? What is that? Because if your mech cannot handle the heat, then neither will they. I'm so sorry, the beef. You should go and watch the beef's video on the Dire Star. It's amazing. Anyway, so right, this mech is going to cook itself. Of course it is. So you may think that it's a bad design, but it actually is a very good design. And so this is what I'm going to call Design A. We're just going to use simple lettering here. We have our 12-ton limitation, so we've gone for 12 medium lasers. Now, the alpha of this is 300 damage, obviously. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, you're going to alpha that and then you're going to cook yourself. Well, no. Because if you look at the heat efficiency here, in BattleTech it actually shows you what your heat performance is in numbers. But I make it pretty simple. In the vanilla campaign as well, typically you have 30 heat that is synced for free by your mech. And then you have a limit of 90. So if you add those two numbers together, you have a total capacity of 120, which is precisely the amount of heat that all of these lasers generate. So, in theory, you can fire all of these just by the skin of your teeth, not shut down, and then fire them all again the next turn, doing 600 damage total, and then on the third turn you would shut down, and you would cool off because you shut down, and then on the fourth turn you would be ready to go again. Which means that your average damage per turn is 200, but your risk level is very high, because on that third turn you're shut down and completely exposed. So in this build we have a very high alpha of 300, but we also have a very decent sustain of 200. So in many ways it's not a bad build, but it is a build that has considerable risk. That third turn shutdown leaves you completely exposed to just being wiped out. Now, a lot of people aren't comfortable with that level of risk and self-damage and all that kind of thing, and that's fair enough. But you can't discount this kind of min-max build in this game. It is very powerful. So, anyway, let's strip these off. The opposite of that, which I'm going to call build B, is obviously the heat normalized version. So that typically means that someone puts in exactly 3, then they add 1 more, and then they're like, well, now I need 3 heat sinks to deal with that, so they add 3 heat sinks to deal with that. And they're like, well, how many tons have I got left? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so I can have another medium laser. Let's do that. Okay, that's cool. And then I need 3 heat sinks to deal with that, so I'm going to put 3 heat sinks in to deal with that. I know that it's not precisely correct, but you can never be precisely correct in this game. And then they count it again, and they're like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yay! Perfect. Perfection. Here's what we have. We have our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh! Let's have one more. In fact, we could even have one more heatsink. It's up to us if we want to slightly heat or slightly cool. Let's play it super safe and let's slightly cool, or that might give us the ability to use jump jets. Okay, so here we are. This is the B build, the sustain build. So the sustain here is pretty obvious, right? If I move these medium lasers to the side. Oh, I just lost one. Why? Oh yeah, of course. Only 4 hard points. Oh, it's Omni-Mech, but it doesn't mean that you can just put as much as you want. Okay, so this is a sustain of 125. And there's no risk, obviously. So at 125 sustain, it is clearly less DPS than the Beef's Pure Pleasure 300 damage spam build. But you don't have a third turn where you're shut down and completely exposed. Still, at 125 damage per turn, it's a pretty anemic way to play. You are effectively looking at a situation where you are doing just over half the potential sustained damage of build A. So this is not really ideal either. It's safe, but it's not ideal. So a lot of people are asking, you know, or some people who perhaps don't fully understand the reasoning behind my thinking when I manage heat is, you know, say, oh, your heat management is atrocious because you have a build that more or less looks like this. So we'll take 4 of these out like this. Let's move the heat sinks to the side just to make them easy to understand. So one of my builds will look something like this, which is a middle ground, if you will. So here, the sustain is only 100 if I don't want to generate heat, right? Which is 1 less than the B build, which has a sustain of 125, or 5 medium lasers. My sustain is only 4 medium lasers, right? Because I have the 30 heat sinking that came with the mech, and then I've added myself another 12 in heat sinks. So I can effectively run 4 of these, maybe 5. If I want to heat or cool, that's up to me. But in terms of pure turn-by-turn sustain, this is weaker than build B. And it's certainly a lot weaker than build A. But like build B, it has no risk. And so just moving on from that idea of not having any risk, I don't want to be in a position like in build B where I have no risk, but I have no options either. I have no potential to do that wild damage. But I don't perhaps want to have that risk / self-damage level that build A has, where it's just like you have to do the full alpha on turn 1 and turn 2, and then you have to cool down. Then you have to full alpha on turn 4 and turn 5, and then you have to cool down. Like, you're forced to do that. You have no choice but to do that. Otherwise, your build does not work. So you have little choice. So what my typical builds look like is they look like this, in that I have a low sustain of 100 and a potential safe sustain, a higher safe sustain could be obtained. But the key here is this bank of medium lasers. So if I move these to the side, so we can say this is my sustain set on the right hand side, and this is my option set on the left hand side. When an opportunity arises in the combat, I can channel the spirit of the beef. Not, you know, be the beef and have the ridiculous alpha, but I can do 200 damage. twice over if I really wanted to. And so the idea behind this is I'm not forced to alpha on turn 1 and turn 2 and then be exposed on turn 3 and then blah blah blah. Instead, I can engage normally, perhaps having slightly less than average damage, but when an enemy mech falls over or a particular opportunity presents itself, I can be like, right, it is time for the beef. 200 damage! 200 damage again! Ah ha ha ha! And it's very powerful. It's powerful to have options. Now, no one can ever sort of be in your exact situation. There will be times when you're building a mech and, you know, you've got an AC-10 lying around and an LRM-15 and some medium lasers and whatever else, right? What I want you to take away from this guide more than anything is that you should put yourself in a situation where you understand the concepts of the A build, the full alpha all the time build, and why that is really strong, why that is the min-maxer's wet dream. But you should also understand that the opposite of that, the full sustain build, build B, which takes very little risk, has also got very little potential and very little options. And so what I want you to think about is a build like mine, where you have that no risk sustain, although it might not be quite as good, but you're looking for those tactical opportunities to use your options. And when those key tactical opportunities present themselves, that is when you strike. So, for example, if I was facing off against build A, yeah, build A is going to pummel me for 300 damage, and then it's going to pummel me for 300 more. Okay? 600 damage on this mech is, you know, unless it's precision striking, it's not going to kill me. Okay? We can put 300 damage here, and we could put 50% of it into the center torso, which would be quite a lot, and put the other 50% somewhere else to represent it being moderately focused. And we would not die. But, conversely, if I do 100 damage to an identical type A build, a beef build, the beef bowl, I've put 200 damage. I've returned 200 damage, so I've returned 100 damage in turn 1, and I've returned 100 damage in turn 2. So I've done 200 damage, which, you know, they've done 600 to me, I've done 200 to them. Obviously, this is not looking great for me. However, when that person then shuts down on turn 3, I can then reach into my pocket for that 200 damage and put it exactly where I want, because they're shut down. Now I've done 400 damage, which, you know, it's still less than 600, but I've guaranteed myself that my 200 damage option has gone exactly where I want it to go. And where I want it to go will probably depend on where my first 200 damage went. You know, if my first 200 damage found its way, if 100 of it, or, you know, even worse, 125, 150 of it found its way into the center torso, I might be able to just win then and there. If, you know, a lot of it found its way into the right torso, say, and the guy's got half of his weapon systems there, that's where my shot is going to go. And you have to remember, of course, that with a A-style build, which is the huge volume of fire, then the huge volume of fire, then the shutdown, I have the second huge volume of fire to go. So on the third turn, that's my first alpha where I'm maxing out the heat gauge, but not shutting down. I then have another strike after that where I do the exact same thing. And because the person in question shut down, their initiative has been pushed back. By being hit, I can then put that second alpha into them wherever I want it to go again, potentially. Not always, but potentially. And so what that means is, at that moment, I've done 100, I've done 100, they've done 300, they've done 300, then they've shut down and I've done 200, and potentially before they get another go, I've done another 200. That's 600. That's the same kind of damage that they did to me. However, I've had the opportunity to put 2 volumes of 200 in precisely on the target that has shut down and exposed themselves. And at that point, I probably will have killed them, or at least destroyed most of their weapon systems. So, from a strict mathematical perspective, you can actually see how something like this does work, can really work for you. But you're not forced into a playstyle, and you don't have to risk your mech every third turn or whatever to keep your sustain up. You can just bide your time for that moment to strike. And that is why I like to build, with weak heat sinking. I'm building beyond my heat capacity, and then people say to me on my Iron Man playthroughs, you could remove a few of those lasers and you could add a few more heat sinks, and then you'd be able to fire more weapons every turn. But that's not the point. The point is that I want this option. This is my option. This is my secret handgun in my pocket that I can pull out when I really need it, or when that golden opportunity appears. These are there for me. And it's not just about this mental exercise where we're talking about exactly 12 tons. Medium lasers make a great pocket argument. So, in the vanilla campaign, auto cannons and such perhaps don't generate much heat or whatever. I mean, they do, but they don't. So let's just put in a couple of AC-20s just for a laugh, okay? And your AC-20s are self-cooling. In fact, if we put in 2 AC-20s, we've completely over-capacitated this mech. So we'll go with another AC-10. For demonstration purposes, we'll go with AC-10s. Okay, so here we go. 2 AC-10s, right? And, what is it, 8 rounds per can? So nothing unusual here about having, say, 16 rounds. So, this is a pretty B build, right? 24 heat, 30 sinking, so a delta of -6. This is a pretty clean build. What do I do with my last 2 tons? Well, why not have that pocket ace? But your pocket ace does not have to be medium lasers. It could also be jump jets. So we could add 2 jump jets and use our pocket heat for getting tactically advantageous positions, right? Or we can do what I did, and we can just be like, right, I want pocket medium lasers. An extra 50 damage, which I can use when I need it most. I mean, I might even be tempted, I'm not really using this arm, right? So then you might think to yourself, well, I can lose a ton there, I can lose a ton there, right? Because there's nothing going on in these arms, and I can have a little bit more to my pocket build. So this build would fit on any sort of vanilla mech that's got 2 ballistic hardpoints and 4 medium laser points. There are a few out there. I could think of King Crab off the top of my head. I think has got 2 ballistics and 4 laser hardpoints. Although admittedly it's a bit heavier, so you'd probably have AC-20s instead of AC-10s. This is the core of the build. The AC-10s is the core of the build. They are using up the heat capacity. They are my sustain, and I fire them every turn. They are the B build. But these medium lasers are my options. I don't use them all the time. They sit there. But when the time is right, that's 100 damage. Which, our 2 AC-10s are 120. So we have a very powerful double damage option that we can reach for in those key moments, in those moments where an enemy gets knocked down, an enemy shows us their back, an enemy happens to take a lot of damage on the left or right side and their weapons are there. Then we want to guarantee that we rip those weapons off here and now. These are your options. This is your choices. So this is the skill set that I want to convey. Now, please, 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 if you have any questions about this, drop it in the comments. I will try and explain as best I can. But these are the methods that a lot of people use to build mechs. And so I just want you to understand the concepts and then have those tools in your tool bag so that you can use them, so that when you're sat there and you're looking at whatever you happen to have in your single player vanilla campaign or in your BattleTech campaign, you maybe salvaged a couple of large lasers, some an auto cannon 5 or whatever, and you're just trying to work out what to do with the stuff that you have. Just think of these builds, can I do an A build? What does the beef's A build look like? How much pure damage pleasure can you deliver to your enemy? Armor? Nah. Heat sinks? Nah. Think about it. Just think about that. Then think about what is the sustain build. So what is the B build? If you were never going to take any risks, if you were going to be completely heat neutral, what does that look like? And from those two positions, build your mech with options. Or at least that's my advice. And you don't really have to take it, but it's there if you wanted it. You're listening to this video. My advice is there. And if you have any further questions, just drop them to me. I hope this helps somebody. If you want more guides, let me know. Heat was a guide that was requested a couple of times. So for those two people, okay, I made the video for you. I hope you appreciate it. And if there's anything further that you require, then hit me up. See you next time.